You know, we spent a lot of time this Shabbos talking about coming together. And in fact, it's not just Project Inspire. Whenever we get together as Jews, we talk about Achdus. If only we could have Achdus, if only we could come together, we would be so strong. And it's interesting, as you look in Parshas Noach, the story of Noach that we all know, which is quite famous. The world was in terrible shape, and the Almighty came to Noach and said, I'll save you and your family, and he builds an ark. But there's another story that happens in that Parsha, which is not quite as famous, and that is the Tower of Babel, Migdal Bavel. And the story is, as you know, they built a great tower to attack God. And it didn't work out. God spread them all over, changing different languages, and that rebellion was put down quite easily. But what's interesting is, as you look at the verses, and you look at the psukim there, you find it talks about that there was such great achdus. There was such great coming together of all the people. And the question we have to ask is, if everyone came together and they were unified, there was unity in the world, how did it lead to such a terrible, disastrous end? And I've mentioned this on my travels quite frequently. In the summer months, my wife runs Camp Dina for girls, 500 girls sleepaway camp. And I usually come up on weekends and I catch up on a lot of my reading from my travels. And I ordered 2 books last summer, and as one of my sons pointed out, that as a result of ordering those books, we are all probably on an NSA watch list, and I'll explain why. The first book was called The Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. And the second book was a book called Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler. And the reason I bought these books and wanted to read them, because so many people have spoken about these books, but very few people have read them. And in fact, there are no 2 other books in history that have been responsible for more deaths. Tens of millions of people around the world, many of our Jewish brothers and sisters were slaughtered because of those 2 books. One book led to communist Russia, one book led to Nazi Germany. And if you analyze Nazi Germany and communist Russia, they also had Achdus, they were unified. They had come together. But as I read the books, I came to understand that the principle that they were built upon was that of hatred. Yes, they achieved unity, but it was only built on hating other people. And the klal, the rule is that if you build a movement, if you build an organization, if you build society based on hatred, in the end, it will inevitably fail. Unfortunately for us, it failed, but only after taking so many of our brothers and sisters. And so Avram Avinu comes to the world, and he's seen Migdal Bavel, and he's seen what they did in coming together to hate God. And he decides that he's going to build Judaism. He's going to build a movement, not based on hatred, on what he doesn't like, but it's going to be a movement of love. Judaism is going to be predicated on the fact that we love our brothers and sisters. And Avram takes to the streets, Nefesh Asher Asu B'chara, and he gets 100,000 people to understand that there's a God. He can't stop talking about God. He can't stop loving God. He is constantly giving it over. And that is the basis for our religion. To love each and every Jew, to love each other. But it's not easy to achieve this love. When I was in yeshiva many years ago, I had a Rabbi, Rabbi Miller, who was giving a shiur in Mesilas Yesharim, Path of the Just. And he wanted to try to explain to us the way that Gedolim, great rabbis, relate to Jews. And he gave us the following mashal. He said, if you're at home, it's the middle of the night, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and you get a phone call. And it turns out it's one of your children, and their car broke down, they're stuck in the middle of some street somewhere. What do? You run to your car, you race over there to be with them. You get a call, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's a good friend of yours. You pause, maybe they have triple, okay, you know what, I'm coming to help you out. You get a call, it's someone you were really close to in high school but you haven't seen in years who needs a hand. You start to Google maybe the local tow truck company, try to figure out, do I have to go or not? You get a phone call. Someone says, I just saw a Jewish name in the phone book, I decided to call you. You hang right up. He said that everyone has layers in their relationships. He said, Gedolim do not have layers. For Gedolim, they love every single Jew, and they will do everything they can for every Jew because of that deep love. They say that Lubavitcher Rabbi, who stood all day long as Jews would come to him to receive $1, and they asked him, when he was much older, how is it that you have the strength to stand all day? And he said, if someone was counting diamonds, they would have that strength. He said, I see every Jew as a diamond. We need to love every Jew, and it's not easy. And I'll tell you two personal things for myself. This is something that I struggle with every day. And I will tell you that when I walk into a room of Jews, I always ask myself the question, can I love every single person in here? And it's not always simple. It's not always simple. And I'll tell you something else. I've been in Klal for many, many years, over 25 years. And in Klal, sometimes there are sharp elbows. And sometimes we have disagreements. And one of the things that I have done personally is that when I daven for the people that I have disagreements to be successful. Because at the end of the day, as Jews, we need to love each other. As Ronald Reagan once said, he said, the person I agree with 80% of the time is not 20% my enemy. And there is so much that unites us as a community that we need to build off this love, because this is what Avram Avinu built our nation into. So this first principle, this one of love, has to be first and foremost for all of us in our heart, for Eshet Torah, and for Project Inspire. You know, when you open up the Chumash right at the beginning, in Genesis and Bereshis, almost immediately it's a total disaster. We find Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, are given one commandment. The commandment is, you can do whatever you want, just please don't eat from that tree. And sure enough, you know the story, the Nachash, the snake, convinces Chava to eat from the tree. She realizes she's in trouble, and she convinces Adam to eat from that tree as well. And when the Almighty comes to confront them, immediately Adam passes the buck and says, she made me do it. The Almighty goes to Chava, and she said, the snake made me do it. The snake's left with no one to blame. But immediately out of the gate, we are living in a world where no one can accept responsibility and everyone needs to pass the buck. And their children, Cain and Hevel, get into a fight, and you know Cain kills Hevel, Cain kills Abel. And God comes to Cain, famously says, where's your brother? And he says, am I my brother's keeper? Total inability to accept responsibility on any level. The next parsha is Noach. God comes, as we said before, to Noach and says, you're a tzaddik, you're an amazing person, I'll save you and your family, build this ark, and we'll just start over with you. Noach builds the ark and he's saved. But what we don't find there is that Noach ever turns to his neighbors and says, do tshuva, repent, say you're sorry to the Almighty. You see, Noach had learned the lesson of Adam and Chava. He had learned the lesson of Cain. He understood what it was to take personal responsibility. What Noach did not understand is how to take communal responsibility. And once again, there was failure in the world. And that is the world that Abraham walks into. Abraham, who understood Migdal Bavel and how to build a religion, a movement based on love, now says not only is love needed, but responsibility. We have to be responsibility for ourselves, and we need to be responsible for others. And he goes to the extreme that even when Sodom and Amorah, two of the most evil, wicked cities in the world, are going to be destroyed, he fights with God He fights with the Almighty to save them. And when his nephew Lot gets taken, he goes to war. Spiritually, physically, he is always there, taking responsibility. And as we close out the book of Bereshit, we're found with the story of Yosef and his brothers. We all are aware of the story where Yosef wants to see if the brothers have learned anything from selling him into slavery. And when they bring back Binyamin, he says, plays a game, and he hides a goblet in Binyamin's sack and says, I'll hang on to Binyamin, and I'll enslave him and put him in prison, but don't worry, you can go free. And this is where Yehuda, Avram's great-grandson, steps forward, not knowing that Binyamin was really innocent and this was a trick. And he says to Yosef, he says, you can't keep the boy. You can't keep my Jewish brother. If you need to put someone in prison, put me. And that's where Yosef can't control himself anymore. Because this idea that Jews take responsibility for one another. I did a lot of political lobbying in my career. One time I was asked to speak for the head of the city council, Melissa Mark Viverito. She was the first female Latina head. And I was asked to give a prayer. And it was in the Bronx, and there were thousands of people. And first of all, I have to tell you, I do love Jews, just as I said before. But usually when I speak to Jews, everyone sits like this. When you speak in the Bronx, it's like going to a Yankee game. I have 4 standing ovations. You know, it was geschmack. So I decided that I was going to give some leadership example. And which example did I give? I decided to tell the story of Moses. When Moshe Rabbeinu is chosen, Moshe Rabbeinu, who grows up in a non-Jewish household, winds up defending the Jews, killing the Egyptian, has to run away. And God is looking to see if he could be that leader. The story is told that Moshe is out with his flock of sheep, and one of the small sheep wanders off. And instead of saying, it is what it is, it was small, it's lost, it doesn't matter, he walks for a very long distance to go and save that small sheep and put it on his neck to walk it back, because every small sheep was important to him. And the Lord Almighty says, if he cares about small sheep like that, he'll care about every one of my Jews like that. That was Moshe as a leader taking responsibility. And as we close Chumash and we get to the end of Bamidbar, and for those of us who have studied the book of Bamidbar, the first half is an absolute disaster. It's rebellion after rebellion after rebellion. First, the Jews want quail and they rebel in Baaloscha. Then we have the spies in Shlach. Then we have Korach and Parshas Korach. It's a total disaster of rebellion after rebellion after rebellion. And then the Jews spend 40 years in the desert. And at the end, when they're about to go into Israel, 2.5 tribes turn to Moshe and say, Moshe, we really like our lives here on this side of the Jordan. We are probably not going to go live in Israel with you. And Moshe is beside himself. He can't take it. He gets all upset. And he says, you're just like your fathers. What do they answer? They say, Moshe, no way. We're Jews. We're going to leave everything behind, and we're going to go at the head of the army and defend our Jewish brothers and sisters. Because communally, the Jewish people have matured. And this has gone on for generations and generations of Jews taking responsibility for other Jews. It's what made us strong. Very shortly, we're going to be reading the book of Esther on Purim, where a young woman who was married to a total animal of a king, who had chopped off the head of his previous wife, was told that she had to go in and defend the Jewish people and try to save them. And she's scared, she's terrified, she's nervous. And she says to Mordecai, you want me to go in there? You know what happened to Vashti. And Mordecai says, one way or the other, Hashem's going to save us. But my dear, perhaps you were put on this earth to save your Jewish brothers and sisters. And I have to tell all of you, everyone in this room, that you were put on this earth to save your Jewish brothers and sisters. It's what it means to be a Jew. We're not here to discuss kiruv or outreach. We're here to discuss what it means to be a Jew. And what it means to be a Jew is to love every Jew, to work hard at it. It's not something that comes naturally. To work hard to love every Jew that we meet, no matter where they are. And we're here to take responsibility. Jews are only as strong as the responsibility they take for each other. Because you and I both know that the rest of the world is not looking out for us. It's really about us. And so Aish Torah and Project Inspire, we've been living these two messages, love and responsibility, from the beginning. And I have to tell you that as we move forward, Aish Torah and Project Inspire together, we're committing to reach out to every single Jew in the world. We have 3 principles that we operate on. They are connect, educate, and empower. Connect. Our job is to connect with every single Jew in the world. Doesn't matter where they are. We're going to find them, and we're going to connect to them. And we're going to create proud Jews, Jews that have a pride in who and what they are. Educate. It's what Aish Torah is. No one gets close to the Almighty without learning Torah. And as I mentioned many times, the educational approach of Aish Torah is something I call the PI approach. PI stands for passionate, inspirational, and educational. Passionate, when you walk into a class with an Aish Torah Rabbi or Rebbitzin, or someone connected to us, you will never fall asleep. The passion is always there. Inspirational, you will always walk out of one of our classes inspired. Educational, finally, is something that we refer to as Torah's Chaim, the living Torah, which is, it's always going to be real Torah. It's going to be Chazal, Chumash, the real stuff. Stories are amazing, but they have to be built back into the Torah that God gave us. That's how we approach things. And if we can educate Jews, they will come back. Torah will bring them back to mitzvos. And finally, empower, that's you. It's about creating Jewish leaders. It's about giving people the ability to stand up and to know how strong you are. We had a program recently, and I have literally been talking about this all over the globe, that came to Aish Torah. It's called Amatz. Amazing program that really came out of Project Inspire. It was set up by Tzippi Reifer and Liba Schwebel and Michelle Pincus. And what it was a program to bring 40 Hasidisha and Yeshivisha female principals to Israel to learn how we teach God. Because the kiruv movement has become the research and development for the Frum community. We had a young seminary woman recently who came to one of our classes. And just to give you an idea, last month, the month of January, we had over 13,000 people that came to our World Center, the Dan Family World Center, to study. She came in, and she said something that was really impactful. She said, look, I know all the intricate laws of Boer. I'm just not sure I believe in God. And that's our challenge to the generation. And I have said that Aish Torah has spent 40 years working with 90% of the Jewish population that was not connected. And now we have to be concerned about the other 10% as well. And that's our job. And when I say our job, I really mean your job. Your job is to walk out of here inspired. Your job is to walk out of here empowered. Your job is to understand and to know that Aish Torah and Project Inspire will help you in everything and anything that you do. We will be here for you. We're here to support you in everything you do. I'd like to just leave off with a bracha, a blessing for all of you, that the Almighty should give you all the strength, should give all of us all the strength to love every single Jew, to take responsibility for every single Jew, and to bring all of us back, all 100% back to Jerusalem, back to Yerushalayim, to build the Beis HaMikdash right across from Aish Torah.